hello there. I had to get my lumpy space princess on.
Oh my glob! Look at those luscious lips!
Because we're gonna be talking about artistic depression. What does it mean to be successful as an artist? And the reason why I have to talk about this is because I am experiencing that special moment in every little girl's life. Little girl, little lady, I don't know. Where when you try to go to sleep and you try to just rip that phone out of your hand and put it down and rest these old bones, these old 26-year-old bones down to rest, and you think, oh, I'm so tired, okay, finally an escape from the day, time to sleep. And you just let one little thought swim into that brain of yours, uninterrupted by the constant media brain. And that thought is just, hey, did you know you're a failure? You know when that happens, just girly things. So yeah, let's talk about it. And I'm gonna frame this conversation as well as just what does it mean to be successful as an artist through my viewing of the film Whiplash. The film Whiplash follows Miles as he goes into an elite jazz band group run by an extremely toxic conductor.
I don't know.
Answer!
The film not gonna just spoon feed people what your opinion on this should be, but I think obviously most people are gonna be aware that the way the conductor is bullying these young men is not okay by any means.
I'm not gonna have my reputation in that department tarnished by a bunch of fucking limp dick, sour note, flattered on their girlfriend's flexible tempo dipshits. Got it?
However, it is through the teachings of this man, the pressure of this man, that at the end of the day, the main character does prevail. He pushes himself beyond any boundaries and gives just an amazing performance that blows us all away. And yes, there is great cost to it. He pushes away his father. He pushes away the girl that he could have had a romantic relationship with.
Well, I don't think that we should be together. And I've thought about it a lot, and this is what's gonna happen, okay? I'm gonna keep pursuing what I'm pursuing. And because I'm doing that, it's gonna take up more and more of my time, and I'm not gonna be able to spend as much time with you. And even when I do spend time with you, I'm gonna be thinking about drumming.
Because we all know how girlfriends and drumming simply does not mix. Absolutely never go together. I know, I get it.
He says multiple times he has no friends. He makes himself bleed while drumming, like sacrificing his body to do so.
Because it's how real men play drums, bro.
Don't be a little bitch, man, and show that drum who's in charge.
One day we're punching drywall, the next day we're punching timpanis. Don't mess with me, bro.
And that's where the film leaves it to be like, okay, obviously we can see that this is a toxic environment. However, that toxic environment did become successful. When I was younger and I watched the film, I realized how much Miles sacrificed in order to be a great artist. And what does it mean to be a great artist too? What does it even mean to be an artist? There's just this very competitive atmosphere being put into this jazz band. We actually never even learn of anyone outside of the drumming little circle. And so you never really see Miles in connecting with the rest of the band. It is truly all about his ambition and him beating everyone, being the best that there ever was. And for me, that's kind of where my views of what it means to be a successful artist really deviates from this. And my cup matches my outfit. That toxic masculinity, I think, can be found in this idea of competing against everyone around you and never really fully considering, how they may help each other. That's the thing that does strike to me in this Whiplash showcasing of what it is to be a musician. Like everyone else, I loved Whiplash. But now I guess most recently in a time of low, when I was watching it as an adult now, it actually left me with just like a sick stomach at the end of the film, even though Miles was successful. As my experience as a flutist in a marching band, my experience was that I loved playing with a band. That's a beautiful feeling and experience. Is you're not really just sitting there being like, I have to be the best. I mean, that wasn't I know that lots of people probably feel that way, but that's not how I felt. What I felt is I loved being in this communal space, and then you're able to have a good performance with a band, and you feel everyone's music and energy all together, working in tangent to make something beautiful. That was my favorite thing about being in a band, and I actually miss that as an adult. And when it comes to filmmaking, when it comes to music, when it comes to lots of things, what I actually do enjoy is the collaborative aspect and understanding, respecting what everyone brings to the table. And Whiplash, you just see none of that. It's all about Miles. It's all about his ambitions, him beating the other two drummers instead of like maybe they could have had a beautiful connection. And that's kind of what the conductor, I think, really pushes, isolating these guys to be against each other rather than having a beautiful communal like band experience. That's very much the environment the conductor pushed. And then also there's these conversations between the conductor and Miles that they really idolize this one other musician and how this guy had a cymbal thrown at his head.
I told you that story about how Charlie Parker became Charlie Parker, right?
Joe Jones threw a cymbal at his head.
Exactly. And he practices with one goal in mind, never to be laughed at again. So imagine if Jones had just said, well, that's okay, Charlie. That was all right. Good job. And Charlie thinks to himself, well, shit, I did do a pretty good job. End of story. No bird.
And then Miles asked,
But is there a line? You know, maybe you go too far and you discourage the next Charlie Parker from ever becoming Charlie Parker.
and the conductor says,
No, man, no. Because the next Charlie Parker would never be discouraged.
Yeah.
and Miles just kind of smiles and agrees. But I guess for me, that just falls apart, romanticizing that, because it's like, well, he could have joined another band. He could have gone to an environment that was less toxic, less violent, and still achieved greatness, like technical greatness. That's a very specific idea of success. That's a very specific way of being an artist, is like sacrificing everyone, isolating yourself, and focusing fully on your selfish ambition, just seeing everyone as a threat. And that's just one very big thing I disagree with. And I guess to bring it back to my own experiences is when I was a flutist and it became time to like audition for district band, my teacher, first thing he said to me was like, well, you know, the flutes are really competitive, so it's going to be really tough. And as a middle schooler, teenager, that immediately just subconsciously, I gave up in that moment. Because I guess when you just frame it so much about the others, rather than like, maybe if I try my best, you know, like that's what matters. And I just kind of like fell apart in that moment. I didn't practice. I avoided practicing out of that anxious fear of competition. And I think different personalities, different people have very different ways of reaching whatever success means to them. I'm such a personality that it actually blossomed when it comes to positive reinforcement. And that comes out of also me just being so critical of myself, especially as an artist.
There are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job.
The conductor in Whiplash specifically brings a less competent drummer to threaten Miles, to push him more. And that happens in real life. That really does happen in band. Conductors and teachers really do try to threaten people that are already ambitious, already working hard, with like more competition to try to push them. And it really depends on the personality and who you are. But I would just hate that. I cannot view art making as me fighting against all these competitors, like some weird warrior thing. And if I did that, I would just never make art. I would just not make films. And it's also kind of a stupid way to look at art and art making, because especially things with film, you need people, you need collaborators, you need to work together. So if you just are constantly looking at everyone like they're against you and that there's someone to beat, and I also think that's a very toxic masculine way of looking at like success. All these, the weird dudes, what are they called? The alpha dudes? Like they're obsessed with this idea of alpha. They're obsessed with this idea of I have to be better than everyone. And that's really where I just disagree so hard. Because first off, there is no artist that is the best at any medium. And then also when it pertains to art, there's many ways of being great. There's the technical aspects of your art and medium. It can be great at that. Conceptually, you can be great at the concept and the meaning and the metaphors behind the art. Emotionally, you can be maybe great at just being really consistent at making art, or politically, like having political messages behind your art practice. There's many artists that I think have done really important work, and technically they might not be that great, but politically or conceptually they've made a great impact. With Miles' obsession with being the best and the conductor romanticizing this one artist and be like, he was the best. Like, it does not exist in art. That there is this alpha freaking dude that never made any mistakes, never made a flop. Even Stanley Kubrick, to some, have made flops, bro. Like, who else? Francis Ford Coppola. Like, Martin Scorsese makes a film like every 3 months. Like, he definitely has flops. I think people might get discouraged when you view people as competitors, to be like, oh, there's so many filmmakers, there's so many musicians, there's so many painters. How can I be better than all of them? And that's why I think it's a bit of a ridiculous lens to look at how to be successful as an artist, because that doesn't exist. Obviously, that's not sustainable. Everyone has flows, and that's just the way also life is. Life is not this one like arc of the hero where you reach the top. Like, success and all these things, like, it's constantly changing, it's constantly flowing. People think art is so much just like this innate thing that you're born into, and if you're not naturally an artist, like naturally good at this medium, then you can't be an artist. And I'm just really against that. My philosophy on it is also, I think art should be accessible to literally everyone. Being creative is part of being a human being. It's what enriches the soul, and I think it doesn't matter at what technical level you are at, it is worthwhile for you to make art. Because I think rather than thinking of art making, filmmaking, playing music, like, as this weird alpha competitive anime art gotta be the best that there ever was, and if you're not at that level, then you're a piece of shit. You're a failure. You don't deserve to make art. I think I'm so against these weird toxic like mentalities we have of that, and I would argue that, you know what I think art making is, I think it's time well spent. That's what it should be. Consider the reason to make art is that it's just time well spent. It's gonna help a lot of people. Most of the people I know are artists, but I will say, like, honestly, right now, 70%, that large majority of people that I know, they're depressed. But one of the reasons they're depressed is because they're not making art. They're not doing the art and the creations that they want to. And there can be many reasons for this, right? Like, economically, the lower you are, the more difficult it is to carve space, time, get the resources to make art. There's lots of reasons, and I'm not trying to just blame the individual on this. And of course, art block, writer's block. I also go through web and flows of creativity, but I think there's a lot of toxic and negative mentalities that really stop people. And one of those is being like, people really wait for the perfect time, the perfect like access to resources, the perfect space to make art, and also just emotionally for it to kind of be the same way as when you were a kid. And obviously when you're a kid, like I was a kid, I was a kid, surprise, surprise. People really are searching for that feeling again, that like blind confidence when you're a child creating something, you know, like being a kid and you're drawing, you're like, yes, this is the best thing. This is awesome. It's gonna be so cool. This is so great. And then you're done. And then you like take your little thing, you shove it in your parents' face. And you're like, look, it's awesome, right? And they're like, yeah, cool. And you're like, yeah, let me go make the next one. I think lots of people kind of want that level of like pure clarity and confidence and access to art that when you were a kid, you could just do it without that voice in your head being like, it's not good. It's not good. I think as you grow up, as you become more practiced, maybe more educated, maybe in your art form, you might have that voice. And you know, that voice doesn't necessarily need to be terrible. But one very important thing that I think a lot of people need to acknowledge is that it's never gonna be like when you're a kid. That's just, you're never gonna have that again. And that's okay. The thing about growing up and becoming an adult is also realizing it's never gonna be comfortable unless you're like somehow at the top of the top born into like absolute comfort, which I don't even know if that exists for anyone, honestly, but maybe it does. But for the rest of us, it's never going to be comfortable like that again. You're going to have the voice, you're going to have the time constraint, you're going to have the resource constraints. That's why I say viewing art as time well spent will really help with that voice that stops so many people. Because if you can just acknowledge like, this is what I want to do right now and it's worthwhile regardless of whatever outcome, then I think more people would would be like just spending time creating. And I know so many people that they want to write, they want to create, they want to do something, but they kind of just aren't capable of getting past that discomfort, that feeling. And one thing that I think is really important that I told myself and I was conscious of is like, if you want to do this, you have to push past the discomfort. You have to create with this discomfort. And then if you keep doing that, like taking the first steps, acknowledging like it's gonna feel uncomfortable, but then you can keep going and you might access those euphoric feelings of creation as you continue. And that's kind of what I mean. Like when people think of an artist, they're like, am I good enough? Am I good enough to be an artist? Am I good enough to be a guitarist? Am I good enough to be a writer? And maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm lying to myself. I'm not good enough. That voice, that's I think a real big miscomprehension of what an artist is. That's not what an artist is. It's not that you have to be good enough. It's really that, are you willing to just like keep doing it? Like, are you willing to put the effort, the time, and to make things that you want to see, that you enjoy? And at the end of the day, even if it's like, it doesn't lead to awards or being the first chair soloist, you're spending your time making art. That's beautiful. I feel like I could speak for hours and hours about my ideas and feelings about what it means to be an artist and what it means to be successful, and how institutions and competition and toxic masculinity and alpha mentality and all these things can deter us from our innate born desire and ability to create. No one should ever take that away from you, ever.